G'day guys, Neil here from Player1 Sim Gear, and today I am stoked to be bringing you another build video. This time we are looking at the P3 and the H3 motion systems from our friends at DOF Reality. Player1 is now proud to be an official Australian distributor for DOF Reality. So if you're interested in anything from their lineup, please check out our website. So today we're going to take you through the unboxing. We're going to show you what's in this big box here, which is actually the base unit. And then you've got the frame and the peripherals that go with the unit on this side here in the taller box. So this is how it gets delivered to your house. These two boxes, plus there's a seat box over there as well, which is going to come with it. Thank you once again for checking out another one of our videos. Please do the usual like and subscribe thing. It means the absolute world to us. Let's get started. All of the DOF package options from Player1 come pre-configured with this metal cyber cover. I think it's essential. All of the machinery underneath is exposed if you don't have this cover on there. So we've gone ahead and included this by default with all of the different packages we offer. So the only difference between the three configuration options on the Player1 site is the accessories that go on top. So you've got racing, flight, or hybrid. Racing is just the base unit, which has the frame which we're going to be building here. You'll then see the HOTAS mounts for the throttle and controls in the flight package. And then the hybrid is just the same as the flight, but it comes with a quick release option to swap the pedals out if you want to have a setup that's both for racing and for flight. So let's take a look underneath. Now this is the P3 unit, so there's a couple of differences between the H3 and the P3, but primarily the P3 has the upgraded motors. First thing you notice looking underneath the rig is how well put together everything is. Everything's nicely bolted in, nicely put together. Overall, actually a really impressive build. So this large box contains all of the bits and pieces that you'll need for the build, including empty packaging boxes, which confused me a lot to begin with, but these are to pack out the internals of the package itself, so you can throw those away. One thing I really like is they've labeled all the little bags of bolts. So you can see that this here is the bag for the base. This here is all the bolts for the HOTAS attachments. Just really nice touch, makes things nice and easy. Okay, so it can be a bit confusing at this point because you've got everything laid out, but you're not entirely sure what you're looking at. And this is clearly a power supply. You've got an emergency stop, you've got some cables, you've got some wiring and some bolts, that's helpful. But you've got a bunch of different bubble wrapped pieces of metal that you're not sure what they do. So each of the accessories that you bought with your DOF package come included in those two boxes. So for example, this is the hybrid pedal plate down here on the front. If you didn't buy the hybrid pedal plate because you bought the flight or the racing versions of the package, you're not going to have that in your box. So what you'll have is probably an empty spacing box inside the base plate, which is where they were packed for us. So what you need to do is just be sure of what components are coming with your build and then lay everything out and make sure that it's there. And you're not going to know what they are because the individual metal components aren't labeled, which makes it trickier. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through each of the components so you can recognize them so that when you open up your build, you'll be able to tell whether they're there or not, as I'm sure they will be. So it's not hard to do, as in they all look very unique and different. So once you know what you're looking at, it's easy to tell. But if you're like me and you like to jump ahead without reading the instructions, you're going to open it up and be really confused about what everything does. So let's dive in and see what each component is and what it's for. So you should have downloaded the paper copy of the manual already. It's going to be incredibly useful. You can get it in the link below in the description on this video. Of course, it's available on the Player1 site or on the DOF Reality site as well. And the first place we start is we build the frame, the subframe if you will. This is the part of the rig that goes underneath this main base component, and it allows for the yaw function, so for the actual whole rig itself to go side to side. These are the four components that make up this subframe. You can see you've got the core base part here and then these two internal struts. So per the first page of the instructions, let's go ahead and put all these together. You've got the rear beam, which is this bigger, heavier duty one. You've got the front beam, which is this smaller piece just here. And then you've got the two internal struts. Now, if your rig came with wheels or caster wheels to allow you to move it around, you mount the caster wheels to the front beam, and then you have the standing legs essentially go on the rear beam. Most of them will come just with the standing legs, in which case they go on all four, and that's the first step. And you can see the two struts come pre-drilled with holes already for the legs, so you can just screw them straight into here, just apply a washer as well. If you opted for the wheel option, you can see they mount on so. There's only two wheels, they go on the front, the idea being that the whole unit can tilt up for you to move it around on the wheels. It's obviously not intended to be particularly mobile, it's a motion sim, you want it sitting still. So the way these work, you can see they've got the wheels are like so, the wheels are higher than the legs, so the only way the wheels are going to engage is if you tilt it upright. So these two struts that run between the two frame points, they have a couple of holes on them. The holes go towards the rear, and the rear is the larger of the two. Okay, there we go. We now have the base. This is the subframe, which is going to go underneath the main base component here. So let's get it mounted. All right, now at this point, what you want to do is take off the Cybercover. It's going to be a lot easier to access everything we need to at this point with the Cybercover removed. So there you go, just those two components for the Cybercover is all you need, just the front and the front and the rear part of it. All right, scratch that. You do need to remove the sides because they're held on by the top, so that's fair. Now what I suggest you do here to make it easier is inside your packaging would have come these pretty firm boxes which are empty. As I said, they use as spacer boxes to keep everything banging around. Use this as your little jack to hold up the rig to allow you to screw in from the bottom. It makes life a lot easier. Okay, so the next stage now is to secure the main, I guess, pin, if you will, the main bearing bolt, which allows this anchor point from the yaw motor, so the third motor here. This is the point that has to join onto the subframe underneath. So to do that, see, it comes like this with a bearing on the end of a bolt, which is in the little plastic container. What you need to do is actually pop this off of here and insert it into the frame. Okay, so if I bring you in close, you can see here you've got the bearing, the mount goes inside this hole. Now ideally it should slot down into the hole. It's a little bit tight, so I'm assuming when I insert the bolt that goes in here from the bottom up, it'll pull it down into it. All right, done. So yeah, as I hoped, when I fastened the bolt into the bottom of this mounting point here, it did pull the bearing further down into the frame, which is good. It was obviously really tight, too tight to put in there by hand. It seems to have pulled it all nicely into place now though, so that's pivoting as we'd hope. So there we have stage one complete. Okay, the next step is we need to attach the rear linkage rod to the longitudinal beam. So you can see it's a little, in the instructions in the paper, it says it could go, depending on which motor you have, it could either be right or left mounting. Essentially, if you've got this poking out part here, go the other way. That's how you know which one to go. Now you also get 3 linkage rods provided, and it doesn't say which is the correct one. Using my power of deduction, the short ones don't fit, so they don't have the length required. Obviously, those are the upright ones. So go with the longer one if in doubt. Okay, and what you want to do is you want to mount to the underside. So the shorter bolt, mount to the underside of the beam. Right, there you go, that's all buttoned up. It's pretty easy to do. Just follow the instructions in the manual in terms of the right order of the nuts and the bolts and the lock washers. One thing to note, it was useful to have a second size 17 spanner, which didn't come in the kit, so it only comes with one. Having a second one just meant I could tighten the nut and the bolt on this left-hand side really easily because it's a 17 on both sides. And again, using the trusty cardboard spacer. And on to the next stage. Now this is where we start building the frame that goes on top of the rig. So we're going to start off with the backbone of the rig. This is this piece here. It's all one piece as it comes. Comes with the bolts already screwed into the bracket clamp here. And we're going to mount this onto the main strut with the downward part pointing forward. Now this part just pulls off. I'm going to show you how this works. It comes already pre-clamped on like that. See, it comes just like that on there. All we literally need to do is give it a little tug and it'll pop off. It's going to be held in place by the bolts. So there's the first 2 bolted in. There's now 4 more bolts that come up from the bottom into the frame here. All right, and there we go. We now have the center backbone part onto the rig. All right, the next stage is to mount the rod holder, which is this part here, as you can see there, onto the main beam, which is this part here. Now you'll see there's 2 holes either side. The larger of the holes goes on the bottom. All right, so this is about, I think it's a 10mm hole. That goes on the bottom, the smaller 8mm hole upwards. Now at this point, I've run out of bolts in the bag labeled frame, so I'm moving on to the bolts in the bag labeled seat. I don't know if the rod holder technically is considered part of the seat as far as the bolt bag goes, but I run out of bolts, so they're the ones I'm moving on to. Now they're all M8, so the key is just, if in doubt, use a tape measure and make sure you're using the right length. That's the main thing that matters here. So in the instruction manual, these are 65mm M8s, so I'm just going to make sure I'm using the right ones, and then hopefully by the end of it, I'll get to a point where I have all the right bolts needed where I need them to be. If not, these M8s are easy to find. I've got a whole bunch over there, so I'm sure you've got some around home too. If you find you've ever run out or used the wrong one, the wrong length, it's probably not the end of the world. Just make sure, of course, you've always got the right clearances on the other end of all the bolts you're using. All right, so there we go. That's the skeleton of the rig pretty much put together now. We've got the motors are mounted onto the upright across here, or the crossbar. We've got the main sort of spine of the rig mounted on and bolted in place. So now it's time to mount the structure on the top. And what we've got is these two seat mounts, which are going to go forward and back. They're the two crossbars, if you will. Then we've got these two parts for the wheel mount. They'll go right and left-hand side. And then we've got the two uprights, which are going to go like so and like so. So I will speed all this up for you so you don't have to watch me doing this, and I will check back in about 10 minutes and maybe a beer or two when this is all done. All right guys, there we have it. Through the power of time-lapse, we now have a fully frame assembled DOF Reality H3/P3 motion system. Now assembling this for the frame components is all really straightforward. In terms of tips and tricks, the only thing I'd say is maybe grab a little bag of extra washers when you're at Bunnings before your rig arrives. It's useful to use some extra washers, put them on both sides of the nut and the bolt. Just with this sort of tubular steel, it can flex a little bit or indent a little bit if you over tighten. So having a washer on each side, so having a few extra washers to use is useful. It just helps prevent that in terms of that damaging the frame at all. The other thing is just don't over tighten, tighten by hand, get it nice and firm, but you don't want to just keep cranking it too much because you absolutely will flex the steel if you go too tight. Other than that, it's all pretty straightforward. You could leave everything relatively loose and to make sure that you can adjust it once you get the seat on. I've kind of buttoned everything down. I'll see how it goes. At the end, once I put the seat on, I'll have a sense of where everything needs to fit. If you do need to move it around, it's just a couple of bolts on either side to raise or lower the wheel plate, and the pedal plate can go out. There's two bolts underneath there as well. So that's pretty much it now. So what we're going to do now is look to get all the cabling tidied up, and then we will put the Cybercover back on, get that buttoned in place, and then the last thing will be to put the seat on, and then we'll be ready to add some peripherals and start testing. Cheers. So, can anyone spot the problem? I probably should have realized this sooner. So the upright struts here need to obviously come up through the Cybercover. So I'm going to put a note back on the build part of this video to make sure you remember to reattach the front part of the Cybercover and sort the cabling out before you attach these front struts. It shouldn't be too much difficulty to just pop them off and reattach them. Let's see if we can thread them back through easily enough. I swear this box is the most useful part of the entire build. Okay, yeah, you know what? That is absolutely no issue at all. What I'm going to say is do these up loosely to begin with, and then do this little exercise to pop them off to refit this back on. It is definitely easier doing the build without the Cybercover on there, and it's no hassle just to pop these bolts off, feed these through, and re-put the Cybercover back on. So yeah, no dramas. Those of you who have watched our build videos before, you'd realize it wouldn't be a Player1 build video without at least one small mistake that we will learn from as we do it. That's the Cybercover all buttoned up. Now in terms of tips for the Cybercover, it's pretty easy once it goes on. You just sort of use the Allen key to tighten all the bolts on the corner. The top comes over the top of the lip of the side, so the sides go underneath, and then the top and the back surfaces go over top. There's also these little things here, which I'll come and show you. These little things here, which are like, I don't know what you call them, stud presses, little plastic studs. They fill up the 4 holes on top of the Cybercover. So there's 2 there. They don't have any, they're not threaded, so they use these little plastic ones. And the trick with the plastic ones is the top part widens it out. So you take out the top part, and then you use the bottom part, and you force it in there and just give it a good little wiggle around and a good push down, and it'll eventually go down and in. And then you feed in the cap on top and it widens it out and holds it in there. Works really well as like a plastic cap too, and puts a bit of positive pressure on it as well, which is going to stop any metallic rattling, which is really cool. And so that is the rig pretty much ready to go now. We'll get it plugged in, and then we'll also get the seat on as the next stage. And there we have it. Now the seat is on as well. I wish I could say it was a perfectly smooth process mounting this seat in particular. The problem with using the tubular steel frame, which has got the holes drilled in it for mounting points, is that the mounting points have to line up to those specific distances between, you know, obviously the pre-drilled holes. You don't have the same flexibility that you have with T-slotted aluminium profile. The challenge I had, and you might find this as well with other custom seat installations, is that the seat brackets, the width of the holes on the bottom of the seat brackets didn't line up with the spacing of the holes on the tubular frame. So I was trying to fix it for a while. I tried a seat slider, but those holes were even further out of alignment. Eventually I got this one to work, but what I recommend, and what we're going to do for all the Player1 packages now for DOF Reality rigs, is we're going to include a couple of rails of T-slotted aluminium profile. All you need is about a 38 centimeter long rail of just either like 40 by 40, just 2 rails to go along the bottom of the frame. They will mount up through the holes in the frame into T-slotted profile, and then on the top of the T-slot you'll be able to mount down through either a seat slider or your rails, be it for reclining seats, which are obviously bottom mounted, or for a bucket seat like this, which has side mount points and the brackets that are needed for that. That way it also will allow you more flexibility with spacing as well in terms of how wide the seat you're mounting is onto the frame. So that's just a slight little mod that I'd make to these frames. Other than that, everything is pretty seamless and easy to put together. In terms of time frame, we're looking at about 4 hours of build time for this rig so far. That was with some filming, so that slows us down a bit because we're doing filming. So you might be able to you might be able to build your rig a little bit faster than that. That's also not really rushing. It's all pretty self-explanatory in terms of how it all goes together. The instructions are really good. Definitely print out a set of the paper instructions. Hopefully this video helps make things a bit easier for you as well. Overall though, everything went together really well. There were no tolerance issues. There was no issues in terms of the parts. We had a few screws and bolts left over, which is cool. I've also got a big stash there, so I use them as well. I also, as I said, main thing I recommend is get some extra washers. They just help in terms of protecting the frame from over tightening of the bolts. But other than that, it's all pretty straightforward. Plugging it in couldn't be any easier. The power pack is back there. I'll show you how we've set that up in a minute as well. At the moment, everything's just been laid out and turned on. We've gone ahead and going to go ahead next and set up the software. But before I do that, I'm going to mount the HOTAS mounting points onto the right and left side. We're not going with a center mount on this one, so I'll show you how we do the right and left mounts for our HOTAS. So let's get into that. Okay, so the HOTAS mounting points couldn't really be any easier. Essentially, it's this sort of L-shaped bracket with a little connector underneath, and that goes into the hole there, and then fastens on with bolts, and this part bolts onto the side of the frame. So I recommend putting the seat on first. That way you know where your tolerances are going to be and where roughly you want to put this, and then mount these last once you've got an idea of how you want the controls to be set up. Yep, that'll work. And that's it, we have peripherals mounted. Now you might have also noticed I changed the seat. So I was playing around with some different seat options last night, and I really wanted to showcase one of the most popular seats that we're actually going to be packaging up with this rig, and that is the Grid Q by Sparco. This is such an awesome seat, one of my favorite Sparco seats out there, and it is absolutely perfect for the DOF rigs. It's a really good size. The Sparco steel seat brackets also work very well. I mean, it is still tight in terms of how they line up on the holes. I had to sort of loosen some things off and do a bit of jiggling. The holes did line up without needing the profile rails. The profile rails will still be an easier option though, and they'll also lift the seat up a little bit more as well than the standard Sparco rails on their own. So I think we'll still include those as an option, but you can certainly just mount the Sparco steel rails with a Sparco seat directly to the rig. Just loosen things off and you'll be able to get it to work. So as you can see, the Sparco seat just looks amazing. This Grid Q is the perfect seat for these rigs. Really nice size in terms of relative to the overall rig itself. You can see really comfortable. It's just a really nice seating position. Pedal placement's perfect. Again, if you had a yoke here, I could move the seat a little further forward if I needed to reach. This is obviously set up at the moment for the HOTAS controls, so it's quite far back in the rig. If I was using a yoke, I'd probably move it slightly further forward, or indeed you can adjust the whole frame to move things around if you need to. So in terms of seat sizing, I always hate it when people show a seat on a rig and they don't explain like how big it is and whether they fit, because it's always hard to find a good guide for whether a seat's gonna be right for you. So I'm 182 centimeters tall, I have a 36 waist, and I'm about 92 kilos, give or take. So this seat is really comfortable for me. It's definitely snug around the hips here and around my butt. Plenty of open space in the shoulders, nice height up the back. I've got it tilted a little bit back in the Sparco rails, and it's just a really comfortable seat and a really comfortable fit. I'm not going to move around in here at all, and it's going to handle the motion really nicely. Oh, and one thing I wanted to mention as well was about the cabling. So depending on where your PC is going to be relative to your motion rig, you might want to look at grabbing the extended cable set, which is available as an option from DOF, or it's available on the Player1 site as well. The reason is that the cables themselves, as they come, are actually kind of short coming directly out of the unit if they're pointing forward. So if this is going to the back, it's not so bad. You can have the rig probably about that far away or so from the back of the rig, and it's fine. You can have the PC. Coming to the front, you can see the cables here, there's plugs here, which is where I've plugged the extended cables in. So the actual range going frontwards is actually only slightly in front of the pedal mount, and there wasn't really enough room for you to put the power box. I mean, I guess you could move it off to the side, it'd be fine. But if you're gonna do a front mounting solution, i.e. if the PC is gonna be in front of your rig, just grab these extra cable set. They add another sort of, I guess, 1.5 meters, maybe 2 meters onto the cables. Makes life a lot easier for you and gives you more flexibility in terms of where you put it. And obviously I haven't tidied up these cables or anything yet, but you'd want to grab like a sleeve for them, grab some, some sort of a cable protector just to keep it all nice and safe and out of the way. You don't want people tripping over the cables, or obviously you don't want to be breaking the connections by stepping on them or anything like that. But yeah, something to think about. Cable length, not that long if it's going frontwards. If the cable's going out to the sides, you have got a bit more space to play with. And then there's a decent power cord that comes off the power box here as well. And then there's the USB plug, which comes off the power box as well and runs into your PC. Okay, so wiring up the rig couldn't be any easier at all. You've got these two plugs, there's 3 of them, one for each engine. And they plug into the back here, and they're all labeled Motor 1, Motor 2, Motor 3. The ones that come out of the rig itself are all labeled as well, Motor 1, 2, or 3. If you use the extension cables, just make sure you remember which one you're plugging into which. Plugs in really easily. They just clip in there and they can't be disconnected. They all nicely clip into place. And there's only one way they can all plug in. Then you've got the USB cable that runs out here into your PC. And of course there's the power, so really simple, really easy to use. Thanks guys, that's more than enough I think for this one video. This has certainly been a long one. If you've stuck around to the end, thank you so much. We really do appreciate it. If you're building a DOF Reality P3 or H3 unit, hopefully this video has been helpful for you and given you a few tips and tricks and saved you some time. Of course, if we've missed anything or there's anything you still want to know, please let us know in the comments section below. We'll do our very best to come back to you straight away with an answer. If you're thinking about getting a DOF Reality unit for yourself and you live here in Australia, please reach out to us. We'll be really happy to help and jump on the phone and talk you through building just the right package for you. If you're anywhere else in the world, please feel free to reach out directly to DOF Reality. They're always happy to answer any questions that you may have. Stay tuned for the next video. We're going to be doing a direct comparison between this, the DOF Reality P3, and this one back here, which is the Cubic QS220 system. We'll be going through the pros and cons of each different type of motion system and which one is right for you. Again, please do the like and subscribe thing. It really helps our channel grow. I've been Neil, this is Player1 Sim Gear, and we will see you next time.